Occasionally, we take a break to ask you all what types of topics and guests might interest you for our coming Thursdays. This is our video theme day. Today is that day. And you might not be aware that the planning crew for these Thursday shows have kind of an informal cycle of things. What we try to do here basically is mix shows. Do some about gears, some about people. We have themes for beginners, intermediate, and advanced video topics. We basically want to rotate things around so there's something for everyone over the course of time. And the Backstage team has gathered a little graphic look back at where we have been up to this point in the year. And so let me switch to my presentation part, and I'm just going to really dive through these really quickly. We started 24 with a show 1381, general look at the latest trends in camera and lighting. The next week we went on to show 1388, looked at compression. Then we had our first major guest, surround sound guru John Ross was there. In show 1402, we had another one, Michael Cioni. Fabulous chance to talk to Michael and get a kind of look at the future of things. Then we did color correction basics in our next show. Charles Klein and CJ Koval helped us do that. A special guest we had after that was Matthew Semiglia of Altheon. Guy Cochran and some others came in for our next look at spatial video with Apple Vision Pro. The next show was Blackmagic Automation with Adam Tao. We moved on from that to prepping for our Eclipse coverage. Boy, that was fun, with an Ask the Expert segment. Guy came back along with others next for our AI with auto clipping presentation. Then we went on for our Oscars graphics breakdown. We looked at Apple Compressor next. And then we did one of the two that we did that was kind of open Q&A. We extended that out and just gave you more chances to interact with the show. Our NAV preview came up right after that. Then the next week we had Nick Bond from FX Factory come in and talk about everything they do there. Show 1486 was our coverage of video tools we all saw at NAB. Then there was another open question and answer one, followed by one that I did, telling stories with editing. Dado Valentic came in from Color Lab AI. Then we did picking lenses and why. We had an interview after that with Sven Pape from This Guy's Edits. And Michael Coleman came in following him, talked about shooting and the editing process. And last week, we covered Ecamm's new integrations with Zoom. So those are the kind of things we talked about in the first part of the year. We want to do the same kind of thing, and we want you to kind of ask you, what are you interested in? Where do you want to steer the show? So if you have any ideas about the kinds of things you want to talk about, today is really, we're going to devote our second hour to you and to kind of getting your feedback so that we know we're driving this Thursday video show in the directions you want us to. So I'm going to open it up to panelists, or if you want to put questions in about topics that you are interested in, this is how you kind of get into the queue. So Courtney, start us off and let us know what you've been thinking about.
I'd like to see an hour done on video wall setup and the type of video servers that are used to drive them and the kind of setup that's used and what's required and how to prep the materials for a large video wall, let's say, behind a rock band or in any live venue that has prepared video playback on it, or for like an award show. So it'd be interesting to see the setup and all that's necessary to do that, how many people are required to set that stuff up, how it's transported, how it's hooked up, et cetera.
Yeah, it seems like that's always been a fixed installation thing, but more and more I see people who are traveling with enough stuff to be able to do that kind of in a remote setup circumstance. So that's a big deal. So cool. Alex, you had some thoughts?
Yeah, I was just going to riff off of what Courtney said. I think that'd be great. And I think that there's different uses too. There's the kind of the presentation use of a video wall, and there's also the virtual production. And so I think those are probably two entirely different days that we could have with video walls, because I think that it's those are, the way you approach those, I think, is very different. So yeah, I think that makes sense. And I think we probably have some contacts with corporate folks as well. And we had View on, and they talked about what they did, but I think that it would be fun, to Courtney's point, to get more into the nitty gritty of let's look at it. I know, so we'll, I think it's a great idea. And if people like that, let us know. And again, not only, definitely talk about it on the show here because it lets us kind of work with it, but also second hour in Discord, we look at that all the time, for reference. So definitely throw things into the second hour ideas as well.
Absolutely. And, this is really a very open thing. I'm just always curious, how much do people want to know about hardware, which is fabulous. And we love doing our hardware tests and the rest of that. But we also have the things like we've done on writing and on lighting and on things that are less about the hardware. Well, lighting is certainly about hardware as well. But techniques, too. Are you interested in that or not interested in that? The more you tell us about what you're looking for, the better we can serve your needs, essentially. So let's dive into our questions from the outside and see what everybody's interested in. Courtney? I'm sorry, not Courtney. Alexander.
John Foltz from Silingsboro, Pennsylvania asks, how about a session on using Media Encoder and Apple Compressor? What settings, troubleshooting, considerations, etc.?
Ooh, Alex.
Have we done one on Compressor before?
We did one actually on Compressor, but it was just the basics of it. There's certainly probably another level. It's so complex an art, and it's something that AI is, I think, going to be maybe dipping its toe into at some levels.
Yeah. I think that it would be interesting to. I think we just have to find some folks that do Media Encoder. I have to admit that Media Encoder on the Mac when I used it a long time ago was really sluggish. So it's gotten much better, but it was not really competitive or not really worth using. The only two that I use right now are Handbrake, and for things that come out as WebM, off the web, I convert them in Handbrake, and then I use Compressor to do everything else. And so but I think it'd be great to have someone talk about it. I think it'd be fun to take one file on the same computer also, and I have Media Encoder. I just don't use it very much. We could do this is what a Mac Studio does in Compressor. This is what it does in Media Encoder with roughly the same settings, and see what the times look like as well.
And John, I'm just going to refer you back. It was show 1458 that we did our second hour on Apple Compressor specifically. So jump back there, watch through that. And then if there are further things, there's absolutely no reason we can't dive back in again. Courtney?
Yeah, I agree with Alex for once. Only we need to include everybody. And Handbrake would be a good choice for that because it is cross-platform, and it does work. Also, VLC. VLC is another good video playback tool everyone knows. It's cross-platform, but it does have encoding as well into it, although a lot of it is command line interface, so you have to learn all that stuff. But VLC would be another good second hour on how to use that, since it would include both Windows and Mac, and even, I think, phones.
Yeah, I think if you spend a lot of time around video, those two eventually end up in your toolkit one way or another because they're very useful. Let's go on to the next question.
Dave Trotman asks, scopes and video standards for color.
Ooh, Alex, thoughts?
Yeah, we have talked to the folks at Omniscope quite a few times, and it's just a matter of lining up our schedules. We'll get that on there, and that's not a problem. So, but I think that they do a lot of training on it already, but I think it'd be really, really great. And they've got a good trainer, and I can't think of her name right now, that has been doing a bunch of stuff for Omniscope on YouTube. So we'll see what we can do about getting them on to talk about both just how to use scopes, but also how to use Omniscope specifically. I think the vast majority of us at this point are all using Omniscope for this solution. So I think it'd be great to have them on.
And if there's one single thing that can improve your results in terms of the look and feel of your video, learning to use these objective measurement things is probably the thing that'll really send you the farthest, the fastest, instead of just guessing whether it looks right, to be able to see whether your vector scope is aligned, to see whether or not your luminance values are there objectively, not whether you think they are, the room is too bright.
I always think it's funny. Like I see people, like someone asks, like, "Well, how do you do a green screen?" I'm like, "Well, you pull out the scopes." And they're like, "Oh, I don't use scopes." And I'm like, "Okay, well, you can't do a green screen. I can't shoot a green screen without a scope. Like I literally need at least my phone. Like I've literally lit a green screen with my phone. Not that I was shooting from it, but I needed to see if it was level. And you can kind of do it with your eyes. I mean, I can get something that's close enough and probably better than most people's green screens by just looking at it. But man, when you have a scope, you can dial that. I remember seeing we had a DP from a visual effects DP from ILM, and you can't have a perfect green screen when you're doing film work because you're seeing the feed and there's all kinds of stuff and everything else. But when you're doing interviews, if you're doing interviews without someone's feet, that green screen should be perfect. Perfect. Like not kind of okay. There's no excuse for it not to be perfect, and to make it perfect requires a scope, and if you do that, the amount of labor that you save and the amount of quality that you add to your key is dramatic. I mean, I can take cheap seamless green and light it well and shoot it with a DV camera and get a better key than most people can with a regular one, just because I'm hitting those numbers right where they need to be hit. And so, so I think that would be scopes are really, really powerful.
And even without at least a basic technical understanding of that, you got to understand. I remember the first time I saw a false color display, and then somebody said, well, the yellow is set at 80 IRE. I understood what that meant. Why? Because I had spent enough time with scopes to understand those kind of numbers. So it's really basic literacy for anybody who wants to analyze any kind of a video screen. And you should spend some time looking at it. So yeah, definitely a good subject. Let's go on to the next question.
Someone from Port Coquitlam, BC, with the same name as me asks, how about a video day on Blackmagic camera iOS app with demo of all of us trying to edit the project as the proxies come in over the cloud?
This whole cloud proxies thing is fascinating to me. Courtney, what do you think?
I think that would be interesting with people contributing live stuff into the Blackmagic cloud. I'd also be interested in the second hour. I'll just glom this onto your question here, Alexander, if you don't mind. As long as we're talking about Blackmagic, is the new. We haven't really seen a demo yet. I mean, a comprehensive instruction manual how it works of the new replay controller that works with the HyperDeck Pros and DaVinci Resolve, and how all that integrates into a live type capture and replay system. That would be cool too.
Cool. Alex?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it, but we should, given that they have the controller and everything else, I think we should definitely try to see what that looks like. A lot of us have thought there's got to be a better way to do replay for a long time. Like it can't be it shouldn't be this expensive, and I don't think this is going to replace anybody's EVS tomorrow. But I do think that having some basic replay would be great. So we'll definitely dig deeper into that.
Let's go to the next question.
John Folson, Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania asks, I teach students and they shoot badly all the time. I'd love a session for non-colorists on dealing with footage that wasn't shot well. Say under or overexposed, wrong color, balanced, or where part is bright and part is dark.
We call it fix it in post. Alex, what do you think?
Well, I think that there's two sessions there. The first session, we can talk about fixing bad stuff, but the other session is how to not shoot bad things.
There you go.
I think there's an hour there of
fix it in pre.
I mean, fix it in pre, fix it in, how about we fix it on set? Yeah. But I think that one of the things that's important is understanding what those tools are. So for instance, in a light, a good example of this is in a bright environment, if I'm working quickly, false color is really, really powerful because I can very quickly look at something and go, oh, that's over, that's going to blow out, this is going to be underexposed, whatever. And I can tune things very, very quickly. And I think people underestimate how powerful that is, but understanding how it works and what it does is really, really useful. Also with little screens, being able to have focus assist, so you see little red edges where things are, those are the kind of things that, we can teach people to do very quickly. And then some of the things like what you're talking about here, like wrong color balance, that gets fixed if you shoot it in log. So we're not totally fixed, but if you shoot it in raw, you're going to do that later, and so that's, so those are, those are some of the things. So I think talking about how to shoot better, I think is a whole episode, and how to do it on your phone. I think that shooting it, I think that film students at this point can really start most of what they do on a phone, and I would say until Samsung figures out how to record video, I would say an iPhone, and that just fundamentally that the S24s are not recording video very well right now. So when they figure that out, you could use an Android or an iPhone. But right now, none of the Android phones are capturing stuff in a way that is particularly useful. But the iPhone captures ProRes, and a lot of other things. And so you could really send students out with the last two generations of iPhones, but I'd say the last one. But I think that shooting on an iPhone or shooting well on an iPhone or a phone in general. But again, I just think that right now the Android manufacturers need to figure out how to record video. And so once they do that, then you can do it on a phone. But I think we could talk about how to shoot these with the Blackmagic camera.
Let's go to our next. It's not actually a question, it's a suggestion. So our next suggestion.
Robert Linkrum in Belmont Shore, California says, set up and manage PTZ cameras over PoE Plus and all the PoE variants.
So you just want to, looking into power over Ethernet. But, once upon a time, all cameras were coax connected into baseband. And now we have so many cameras that are sitting on the network as network things. In fact, I will never forget the first NAB where I was hired to do some video work. It was 6 or 7 years ago. And there were no BNC connections on anything. It was all video over IP. And I was lost for a minute. And I had to learn very quickly that it doesn't work the same. Now there's so much video that is flowing over networks as opposed to traditional cabling that it's something you really have to understand if you're going to work in this industry. Alex?
I don't know if we could pull off a whole hour, but it feels like PoE is it's probably a Friday session, not a Thursday session. But just a suggestion for the team on Fridays to think about is just talking about PoE, the use of PoE, PoE plus, PoE plus plus, all those things about, and like how much, like, so for instance, I have a router here I just got, and I made the choice of making it 140 watts because I had to think about what, it's all PoE plus, but I had to decide, like, I could spend another $200 and have it 300 and some watts, that are available to it. And the power bricks get really big, for this little router and these huge power bricks to deliver that power. But understanding how PoE works and how you're going to figure that out and what those requirements are, I think could be useful because more and more of the stuff that I have laying around are PoE.
Yeah, there you go. Next suggestion.
David Brady in New York City asks, I think revisiting FFmpeg would be beneficial, a basic understanding on its uses. We dove into the deep end years ago, but I use it more and more for quick work.
I got to tell you, I could use that. FFmpeg as kind of a front end to so much of the codec stuff is something that I don't understand nearly well enough. Alex?
Well, fortunately, there is a GUI that is the front end for FFmpeg. It's called Handbrake. So Handbrake is basically, that is a graphical interface for FFmpeg. That's all it is. And they just expose all the things that FFmpeg can do with little pictures and buttons. But you can, of course, just write scripts and just build a pipe that is just like, I want to do all these things and have it pop out the other end. So I do think that talking about FFmpeg, we could probably do one on Handbrake on its own, to Courtney's point earlier. Handbrake is a pretty deep product, that has, it started off as something cute that we all use to rip our Netflix DVDs, and has grown into something that is a pretty useful tool to, get almost any kind of format to something else. So it's powerful.
Those translators, VLC, which has a huge open source community behind it, Handbrake, which is the same, MPEG is the motion picture
and Shutter,
its original extension, but yeah.
Shutter Encoder is another one that was mentioned, and then David Brady also has the AMIA opensource.github.io FFmpeg provisor. So there's a couple of them.
Yeah, huge amount of power if you want to get back into the programming side of things and automate. That's how people build a lot of the push this button and it'll do all the things you want systems. Let's go to the next suggestion.
Dan Huber in Erie, Pennsylvania asks, how about AI inside of AV technology installed solutions to assist creating control surfaces and graphical user interfaces?
Getting more and more of that as we go. AI is going everywhere. Courtney, what do you think?
Well, you could use it to lay out an interface, perhaps, if you're going to manufacture something, but its creativity usually is problematic because it's hallucinations, especially with text, and, button shapes might get a little bizarre. But what we could do is look at the AI AV generation, generative video, which there's more and more generative video engines coming on from Stable Diffusion Engine and others out there that have I think there was another one just released yesterday that's not as good as Sora, which is still not been released, I think, to the general public. But some of these are now coming out for that will generate up to 4 or 5 seconds of AI generated video from a text prompt, and that would be a good second hour to explore all the AI video generators that are out there, how good they are, how long they can go, and whether or not we have access to them. If they figured out how to put guardrails up to protect them, and that's probably what's holding them back from general release.
Alex?
Yeah, I'm very curious about the idea of how to use the AI as inside of those things. So I think that it'll, and as far as surfaces and GUIs, but I do think that there is a dance between, and we've talked about this in the past, a dance between implicit control by an operator and the explicit actions that are done by an algorithm or by a, either by the algorithm or by AI or whatever, where you're just telling it what you want to get done and it just kind of does the things that you're trying to do, obviously, and in a fairly tight way. And you're seeing this really with how Apple's implementing a lot of these things where they're essentially giving it very tight rails for the things that are on the phone and the things in the private cloud. You can't do everything. They give you somewhere to go everything. You can add ChatGPT if you want, but the stuff that they're doing is very tight rails. The chances of hallucination are not zero, but much less. And I think that looking at where AI can be given some very tight guardrails of these are your options, and it's less likely to produce a bad outcome, and then being able to have someone give it implicit control, I think is really interesting.
Let's go to the next suggestion.
Douglas Carmichael is suggesting 2110 infrastructure and how to build it.
Boy, that's topical, Alex.
Yeah. we should talk about 2110. I mean, I think it was hard because we've talked about 2110. It's been hard because before Blackmagic was doing 2110, there wasn't a lot of options that were affordable that we could just go grab and start up and turn on and make it go. So we'll see if we can get some 2110 infrastructure so we can talk a little bit about the networking. I think we can talk about it in a theoretical way. I do think that it's worth talking about because over the next couple of years, we'll probably see a lot more of it.
Yeah. And it's a IEEE specification, isn't it? Or am I wrong about that? It's
just
defines
it's a SEMTI specification.
SEMTI. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move to the next question.
Mickey Makajor from Manila, Philippines asks, multiple practical 3-point lighting demonstrations for various looks. Well, that's good.
Ooh, now you're speaking my language, Mickey. Alex?
Yeah, we're going to try to get my brother to come back. My brother, of course, did Steadicam. Session a little while ago. I have access to a little studio that I think we can probably do some shooting in. I'm thinking about doing some, if people are interested, doing some green screen, there's some green screen stages there, so I can possibly do some green screen of how to do it finally after all these years of promising we'd get to a green screen session. I actually have the tools to do that relatively easily. One of the things I was hoping to do is bring him in to do a lab. He's on a film right now. The film that he shot, not this last one, but the one before, just came out on Apple TV Plus. So if you watch Presumed Innocent, my brother was the A cam for that film or that series. So he was. So you guys all got to see him talk about Steadicam, but you see a lot of Steadicam work there. So in that series, but he's on a film right now. He gets off in mid July. So we're going to see if we can't rope him into doing some potential lighting and shooting labs with us as we go forward.
Courtney?
Sorry, lost mouse. ASC does master classes on lighting, and there's videos posted. I don't know if they're freely available, but if we could talk if Alex's brother's a member of ASC and has access to that stuff to see some of those ASC master classes or discuss what's available and where to see them on lighting are very informative.
Well, I think we should discuss it though. I mean, we can definitely refer back to them. I think it's mostly I don't need to play something in our second hours, but we can. But I think sending people, and I think there's a lot on the internet as well, though, of some pretty good DPs that are talking about it. But I think answering questions and potentially again having some basic lab might make sense.
I was just wondering if I could do something from the desk, if I can get complete control over the lighting range.
Yeah, little lights. Like
Yeah, little, or just something like one of our setups, and go through. This is the rim. Here's what happens when you turn it up and turn it down. Here's the key light. Why did I set the key light where I did? Let's see it with the rim, without the rim.
There is a lighting. I can't remember who makes it. It's a lighting simulation.
Ooh, that'd be interesting.
It's a lighting simulation software that is like it calculates it to be as accurate as possible. For building out. It's for photographers. I'll try to find it. We should bring them on, but that'd be another one that would be kind of cool.
Well, the whole tradition of photography for portraiture and things like that, they have modeling lights built into their flash things, so you can turn them on and set lighting ratios. Exactly what we're talking about. What should be what's the proper for this result ratio between your key light and your fill light and your rim light?
I think this might be it. It's called set a light. I'm not 100% sure. So you can say, I have a person here. And then this might be a fun one to at least try.
Yeah.
And that you can set up, these are different looks, but you can, and it works on Mac and Windows. But you can say, I actually want to use this light with this thing. And it's, theoretically simulating, simulating those out. So we'll have to, we'll see if we can play with that or even have them on.
Cool. Mickey, thank you for the suggestion. Let's hear our next one.
Next one comes from Roz Humphreys in Comox, British Columbia, Canada. Would motion control devices and types of uses be interesting?
Courtney, got big budgets? Sure.
It's an interesting field, although I think it's shrinking greatly since the availability of free or very cheap 3D match move software that's available in post to do what we used to have to do with motion control for match moving, between shots, especially in visual effects. So they're used less and less these days, but because it's a lot cheaper now just to do match moves in post.
Alex?
I think that what's really interesting is potentially some of the match moving and motion control on a sub $10,000 range or even sub $5,000. There's lots of these little sliders. There's remote heads. There's lots of things that you can reproduce. And a lot of times what they're used for, at least for a lot of creators, is you're doing product shots. You want to do those product shot going around it or something like that. And those are not particularly expensive, to run. So we might be able to even look at some of those solutions.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to get somebody in who does a lot of tabletop work, because tabletop is its own little environment there, trying to make things look absolutely perfect, particularly product shots, modeling, and things like that. A lot of work there. So yeah, thank you, Roz. That sounds like fun. Let's go to the next suggestion.
Dave Trotman in Edmonton, Canada asks, ND filters, proper application.
Neutral density manages, and for those of you who might be unaware, a neutral density filter is a filter that passes all the colors properly, just reduces the pure amount of light going through the lens to hit the sensor. So it does not shift. A good neutral density filter does not shift colors at all, just the amount of light reaching the sensor. Alex, thoughts?
I think one that might be interesting to expand on this a little bit is the use of a matte box. So, when you go into film, we stop putting things on our lenses and we start using matte boxes. And I think that could be a really interesting process, of what matte boxes are, how they're applied, and why we use them instead of putting things on our lenses.
Absolutely. Courtney?
And include graduated ND filters, which can be used in some situations, but not all situations. If you've got foreground stuff, you can't use them. But on landscapes and things, graduated ND filters can be used to take the bright sky down and see the exposure in the clouds without taking the landscape in the foreground, especially if it's backlit, to dark areas. So the use of grads in graduated ND filters would be another thing. Then you got to have a matte box,
First time I had a shoot we had to show bags of dog food, but we wanted an organic thing. So we went up to Woods Canyon Lake in northern Arizona, and I took along a matte box and a grad filter, and I was able to get an extraordinary split exposure of a beautiful sky plus the lake and everything else in without having to shoot HDR. We didn't have HDR back then, and that was the tool of choice for managing to get a really nice scene when you have what would have been a blown-out sky against a lower thing that was nowhere near the same level of intensity. So, yeah, that'd be fun. Let's go to the next question, or last suggestion.
Douglas Carmichael says, text-to-video generators and other emerging AI technologies, AI upscaling, etc.
Well, Alex, big subject.
Well, the generators, I think, are just about, there's a couple of them that are starting to roll out. A new one, Suno, I think, rolled out theirs yesterday or the day before. And that what happens is as soon as one, they're all working on them, hoping to make them better because they still hallucinate. And then somebody releases one and starts taking market. And then everybody else releases the ones they're like, okay, well, we're going to put out whatever we have right now. And so I think that we're in the process of seeing that right now. And I think it's going to, I think it's a good subject. I think probably it'll be a better subject in August or September when probably there'll be 3 or 4 of them to pick from.
Next suggestion.
Mickey Macachor in Manila, Philippines asks, color science with someone like Kostas Theodosiou.
Oh, color science. That's a simple subject. There's not much to talk about. I'm joking, of course, Alex.
Yes. Yeah, we'll reach out to him. See if we can't see what we can do there.
Excellent. Let's go on to our next suggestion.
Next one's for me. How to organize and shoot a music video.
Ooh, you don't see them as much now that MTV is not doing music videos as much, but it's something I think most of us have been involved with at some point or another in our careers. It's a fascinating convergence of technologies to take an existing work of creative effort, a song, and bring it to life on screen. So, Courtney, your thoughts?
I can give you the key ingredients right now, Alexander. It's make sure you have plenty of food for the crew and make sure you make a flat deal on hours.
You can tell you're getting practical advice here, folks. It's not all theoretical. Sometimes it's, craft services is what is going to make or break your shoot. Let me tell you. Alex, your thoughts?
M&M's at 4 p.m. That's the key. Don't do it before 4 p.m. It gives them that little
chocolate
push.
Rush.
It gives them a little chocolate rush. They're all tired and everything. They're all tired and cranky. And then you give them little M&Ms and you got them till 6, but after that you're done. Like so they're now they get really cranky.
I will say there are a lot of things to learn from that form, from the music video form.
Yeah,
it tends to be short.
I would love to. I haven't done music videos in a long time, and so I would love to work on a music video again. We've actually reached out to a handful of bands to do some music videos, and so we'll get more intense about that over the summer. It seems like a really good idea. We have one band that we're really trying to sell on doing one of their music videos because they haven't made one yet, and we think it'd be a lot of fun. So we'll see what we can do. It'd be fun to do one on to take an older song that already has a music video, but reimagine it on an iPhone or something like that, and do an iPhone music video production would be kind of fun too.
Alexander?
Okay, so this is very valuable advice. M&Ms, but which ones? The plain ones? The peanut ones?
Plain. Do not mess around with any of the other ones. If you're going to give out M&Ms, if you put out the peanut ones, here's the problem is that the peanut, everyone eats the peanut ones and they complain about the plain ones. You just put out the plain ones. They're compact. They're all don't.
Well, I've got problems.
And definitely none of the ones that are like the peanut butter cup ones in a thing. I mean, it's just they're M&Ms. Yeah,
that's Reese's Pieces. One of the famous.
No, Mickey says the peanut
disasters.
M&Ms are the only M&Ms, and I like the peanut M&Ms, but I strongly prefer the.
All right, put in a note an entire second hour on M&Ms or on-set candy.
Well, I think that there's Crafty. I think we did one at some point about this, but doing one on Crafty, that's probably more of a Friday subject, but that's a suggestion for the Friday team. Crafty would be another good one to come back to.
Black licorice whips and its effect on teeth in post-crew break. Let's go to the next question or suggestion.
Dave Trotman in Edmonton, Canada says, tips for shooting outside.
Actually, I dismissed that in my brain for a minute, but I got to tell you, between environmental things, like I grew up shooting in Arizona, and through 8 months of the year, it is a significant challenge to shoot stuff outdoors there. But that's true in snow country. It's true in a lot of places where going out can be a significant challenge, and you must be prepared for it. Alex, your thoughts?
I think that it'd be a lot of good suggestions there. I think we could go out and shoot, something and talk about it and talk about some of the gear that we use. I mean, protecting yourself from the environment, shooting well outside, shooting over time. I think those are all things that would be useful.
Yeah, it's sun control when you're out there with a direct sunlight and infecting your shot somehow, and how you manage that could be a whole one almost by itself. Courtney?
And shooting in inclement weather, whether generated artificially for the shot or actually preparing for it if you don't have control over the weather at your location. And preparing for that kind of stuff is crucial. If you find yourself out in the middle of the desert and a giant rainstorm comes in, you better be prepared for it and have the way to shelter your equipment, get it out of the rain, etc. So that kind of stuff would be a good second hour on how to shoot in the rain, the types of things that are available to protect the equipment and still get the shot in a pouring down rainstorm.
Yeah, nice. Good things all the way around. Let's go on to our next suggestion.
Mickey McAchore is back again from Manila, Philippines. The Sunny 16 rule, and other basic image exposure rule of thumbs that teaches the basics of camera exposure without reliance on monitors and scopes.
Yeah. Alex?
I think it's a great idea. I was trying to think of the last time I did something without monitors and scopes, and I think it was a long time ago. I will say that a lot of that is built into cameras now. You have I think it'd be good. I think it's good to know how to do it. It probably has more of my resistance to doing it. Like if I'm not going to have what I need, I'm kind of like, I'm not going to. Life's too short. I'm just not gonna go out. If I can't do it. But that definitely limits my where I go. So I think it makes sense.
Courtney?
I used to work with a gaffer named Bill King all the time on commercials. And Bill was an old school gaffer. He was a gaffer on I Love Lucy. So that's how far he comes back. And he would go out into the set and he would set all the lights, and we were shooting on film, and he never used a meter. He would just hold his fist up like this and hold it in the light and look at models. And he'd go, throw a single in that one over there. Okay. And then he'd turn to the cameraman and go, split 5, 6, and 8. Never used a meter. And I asked him, what happens if he washes his hand? Does he have to have it recalibrated?
He's been on vacation in the Bahamas.
You see him with his hand. You see him with his hand in a wash. And what are you doing? I'm calibrating my hand.
Calibrating my dipping it in a certain tea for 3 minutes before I go to shoot. We are getting more and more tools. But, I'm a great believer that if you know the basics, you keep them in the back of your mind, and it's just that one time when you come out and everything is not working and you still need to get the job done. The more you know, the better off you are. At least that's what I've always discovered. Let's go on to our next question.
Rian Smith in Trinidad, West Indies says, when starting a studio now, which is generally cheaper for a small studio hoping to get into accepting live video from the field? SDI, 2110, NDI.
Alex, what do you think? What is the
I think that there's a couple days there that we could talk about an SDI workflow. It could be a series that happened once a month or once every quarter or whatever. That's like building an SDI studio, building like a basic studio that does, let's say, 3-camera interview. Like we decide what it is. It's got to do 3 cameras. It's got to have this many mics. It's got to do this stuff. And one of them is SDI. One of them is NDI. One of them is 2110. And we just talk about what it would take to put each one of those together and what the cost would be, and do they output roughly the same thing? And I think that'd be a really interesting series to do, like we did with like the different studio costs. We did a little of that, so this would be kind of similar to that. It'd be interesting.
As we always say, we are here to answer your questions. That's all the input we've had put into the show for today. So we're going to wrap things up. And thank you very much for your suggestions. It really does make us feel better when we know we're taking care of the issues, the topics, the subjects, the presentations that you are most interested in. So this is very valuable to us. And I thank everybody who watched, participated, added things in there. Those go on top of our thanks to all the panelists who showed up today and those who showed up all week long. We had another tremendous week full of a lot of expertise here. The back-end crew who shows up every day and puts things together for us. I wish you could listen to some of the chats out of how much effort goes in from everybody all around the world who participates in this show and the expertise they bring to the table every single day. It is inspiring for me, nothing short of that. And of course, to our producers, those of you who pitched in questions today and everybody who helps us make this show possible. Without you, it does not happen. Telect traversal for today, I actually don't see it. I don't know if it's been calculated. Oh, wait a second. Maybe I was just in the wrong place. Yes, it has been calculated. Today, wow, we went a long distance, 102,000 miles we would have had to travel to get the expertise we brought to you on the panels today and through your questions. That's 164,000 kilometers. And for those of you following, that is 809 million bananas for scale. Thanks for watching After Hours. Head over. It'll be fun today.
Oh, I need to figure out how to get those numbers fed into my watch for my steps for the day.
Exactly. You did great.
Man, I've reached my goal.
Exactly.
You laugh about that. My watch is constantly telling me, good job.
Good job.
You did people.
A good job.
Oh, you went 20,000 bananas today.
Yeah.
You're crushing it today. Really, thank you, watch.
You convert your goals to bananas. I like to walk. I did 12,000 steps, and that is, and I think 12,000 steps would probably be about 4,000 bananas.
106,000 micrograms of potassium.
No, it'd be the other way. It'd be like 40,000 bananas. It'd be like 40 or 50,000 bananas. But I think measuring your walking in bananas would be great.
6.5 miles, something like that. Yeah.
All right.